Rabbit at Rest. Standing amid the tan, excited post-Christmas crowd at the southwestern Florida Regional Airport, Harry Rabbit Angstrom has a funny sudden feeling that what he has come to meet, what's floating in unseen about to land, is not his son Nelson and daughter-in-law Prue and their 2 children, but something more ominous and intimately his own death, shaped vaguely like an airplane. The sensation chills him, above and beyond the terminal air conditioning. But then, facing Nelson has made him feel uneasy for 30 years. The airport is relatively new. The terminal is a long, low, white building like a bigger version of the Sunstruck clinics, dental, chiropractic, arthritic, cardiac, legal medical, that line the boulevards of this state dedicated to the old. You park at a lot only a few steps away from the door of sliding brown glass. The whole state babies you. Inside, upstairs, where the planes are met, the spaces are long and low and lined in tasteful felt gray. These long, low, tasteful spaces remind Rabbit of something. These are futuristic spaces, like those square tunnels in movies that a trick of the camera accelerates into space warp to show we're going from one star to the next. 2001. Will he be alive? He touches his wife Janice at his side, the sweated white cotton of her tennis dress at the waist, to relieve his sudden sense of doom. Gate A5, she says, as if his touch had been a technical question. From Cleveland by way of Newark, she says, with that businesswoman efficiency she has taken on in middle age, especially since her mother died 7 years ago, leaving her the lot, Springer Motors and its assets, one of only 2 Toyota agencies in the Brewer, Pennsylvania area. The family all still speak of it as the lot, since it began as a used car lot owned and run by Fred Springer, dead Fred Springer, who was reincarnated. His widow Bessie and daughter Janice have the fantasy in Nelson, both being wiry shrimps with something shifty about them, which is why Harry and Janice spend half the year in Florida, so Nelson can have free run of the lot. Harry, chief sales representative for over 10 years, with him and Charlie Stavros managing it all between them, wasn't even mentioned in Ma Springer's will for all the years he lived with her in her gloomy big house on Joseph Street and listened to her guff about what a Saint Fred was and her complaining about her swollen ankles. Everything went to Janice, as if he was an unmentionable incident in the Springer dynasty. The house on Joseph Street that Nelson and his family get to live in just for covering the upkeep and taxes must be worth $300,000 now that the yuppies are moving across the mountain from Northeast Brewer into the town of Mount Judge. Janice is rich. Rabbit would like to share with her the sudden chill he had felt, the shadow of some celestial airplane, but a shell she has grown repels him. He is alone with his premonition. Watching a little guy, 70 if he's a day, breaking into a run, hopping zigzag through the padded pedestal chairs so he won't be beaten out at the arrival gate, Harry remorsefully feels the bulk, 230 pounds, the kindest scales say, that has enwrapped him at the age of 56, like a set of blankets the decades have brought one by one. Sometimes his spirit feels as if it might faint from lugging all this body around. Little squeezy pains tease his ribs, reaching into his upper left arm. He has spells of feeling short of breath and mysteriously full in the chest, full of some pressing essence. When he was a kid and had growing pains, he would be worried, and the grown-ups around him laughed them off on his behalf. Now he is unmistakably a grown-up and must do his own laughing off. A colorful octagonal nook of a shop selling newspapers and magazines and candy and coral souvenirs interrupts the severe gray spaces of the airport. Janice halts and says, "Could you wait here a sec till I see if they have the new L? And maybe I should go back and use the ladies while I have the chance." "Now you think of it," he says. Well, do it if you're going to do it. While she's in the ladies, he cannot resist going into the shop and buying something to nibble, a Planter's peanut brittle bar for 45 cents. He thinks of going back and buying another for his grandchildren and him to share in the car, but doesn't trust himself not to eat it all and makes himself stand and look out the window instead. A star has appeared in the daytime sky, in the blue beneath the streaks of stratocirrus, an airplane glinting, lowering, heading straight toward them. This glint, he thinks, holds his near and dear. Nelson, his son, his left-handed daughter-in-law called Prue, though she was christened Teresa, Judy, his 8-year-old granddaughter, and Roy, his 4-year-old grandson, born the same fall Harry and Janice began to spend half the year in Florida. The star in the sky grows, has become a saucer shape, glinting in a number of points. He imagines the plane exploding as it touches down, ignited by one of its glints. Janice is at his side again. She is breathless, excited. "Harry, hurry," she says. "They're here, 10 minutes early. There must have been a tailwind from Newark." That plane he had mentally exploded hadn't been their plane at all. Heart thumping, his breath annoyingly short, he strides after his little wife down the wide gray carpeting. They reach gate A5. People get off of airplanes in clots. One self-important fusspot with 3 bags or doddery old dame with a cane, bunching those behind them. "There they are," Janice pronounces at last, adding under her breath to Harry quickly, "Nelson looks exhausted." Not so much exhausted, Rabbit thinks, as shifty. His son is carrying his own son on his left arm, and Nelson's right eye squints, the lid seeming to quiver. Harry goes forward as soon as the ropes allow to lift the burden from his son, but Nelson seems reluctant to let go, as if the child's own grandfather is a kidnapper. Roy, too, clings. With a shrug of exasperation, Harry gives up and leans in close and kisses Roy's velvety cheek and shakes his own son's small and clammy hand. In recent years, Nelson has grown a mustache, a tufty brown smudge not much wider than his nose. His delicate lips underneath it never seem to smile. Nelson has inherited Janice's tense neatness of feature with her blur of evasion or confusion in the eyes. The puzzled look sits better on a woman than a man. Worse, Janice's high forehead and skimpy fine hair have become in Nelson a distinctly growing baldness. One earlobe bears a tiny gold earring. Harry carefully greets Judith and Prue. Going to be 9 in less than a month, the skinny girl is a sketch of a woman, less than life size and not filled in. A redhead like her mother. Lovely complexion, cheeks rosy under the freckles, and the details of her face frighteningly perfect, as if too easy to smash. When he bends to kiss her, he sees in front of her ear the sheen of childhood's invisible down. "What a pair of beauties," he says, of the mother and daughter. "Prue, how's the world treating you?" His daughter-in-law surprises him by, as he bends forward to kiss her cheek, kissing him flush on the mouth. Her lips have a wry, regretful, shy downward twist, but are warm. Since he first met her in the shadows of Ma Springer's house that long-ago summer, a slender, slouching shape suddenly thrust into the midst of their lives. Nelson's pregnant Roman Catholic girlfriend from Ohio, a Kent State University secretary named Teresa LaBelle, to become the mother of his 2 grandchildren, the carrier of his genes toward eternity. Prue has broadened without growing heavy in that suety Pennsylvania way. He stands gazing at her in a half-second's post-kiss daze. Having a wife and children soon palled for him, but he never fails to be excited by having, in the flesh, a daughter-in-law. She says, slangily, to mask the initial awkwardness when they meet, "You're looking good, Harry. The sunny South agrees with you." Nobody else thinks so, he says, and grabs at her shoulder bag. Let me help you carry some of this stuff. I'll take the bag. Prue shifts the coat and toys to extend her arm to let him take it, but at the same time asks him, should you? Harry asks, why does everybody treat me like some goddamn kind of invalid? But he is asking the air. Prue and Janice are hugging with brisk false enthusiasm, and Nelson is plodding ahead down the long gray corridor with Roy back to sleep on his shoulder. Harry is irritated to see that, though Nelson has a careful haircut that looks only a few days old, the barber left one of those tails, like a rat's tail, uncut and hanging down over the boy's collar, under the spreading bald spot. How old does he think he is? 17? What's his idea, rushing on ahead like that? Rabbit asks. Who's he sore at? Probably me, Prue says. I've given up trying to figure out why. Of all the addresses where Harry has lived in his life, the number of the Florida condo is the highest by far, 59600 Pindo Palm Boulevard, Building B, number 413. He hadn't been crazy about the 13. In fact, he thought builders didn't put that number in things, but maybe people are less superstitious than they used to be. Valhalla Village, a big grouted sign, the two words curved around a gold ring of actual brass. You turn in at the security booth, get recognized by the guard there, park in one of two spaces with your condo number stenciled right on the asphalt, use your key on the outer door, punch out the code number to open the inner door, take the elevator, and walk to your left. With their suitcases bumping the walls of silver and peach, and Janice and Prue still gamely gabbing, and Roy being made to walk on his own 2 feet now that he's awake for once and crying about it at every step, Harry feels they are disturbing a mortuary calm, though in fact most everybody behind these doors has contrived something to do in the afternoon. The door to 413 has a double lock, operated with 2 keys, one of which also opens the outer door downstairs. With the impatient mass of his entire family and its baggage pressing behind him, Harry fumbles a bit, his hand jumping the way it does when he's feeling crowded in the chest, his notched key scratching at the wiggly small slot. But then it fits and turns and clicks and the door swings open, and he is home. This place could belong to one of millions of part-time Floridians, but in fact is his and Janice's. You enter in a kind of foyer, a closet door to the left and on the right see-through shelves of stained wood Janice has loaded with birds and flowers she made out of shells in a class she took that first year down here, when she was still enthusiastic about shells. The shelves separate the foyer from the kitchen, with the dining room beyond it. Straight ahead lies the living room area, where they have the TV and the comfortable wicker chairs and the low round glass table they often eat dinner from, if a show they care about is on. To the left, a square-armed blonde sofa can be folded out for a bed, and a hollow door leads to the master bedroom, which has a bathroom and a storage area. The guest bedroom is entered off the living room, to the right, and has its own bathroom that backs up to the kitchen plumbing. The arrangement other years has been that Nelson and Prue take this room with a cot for the baby, and Judith sleeps on the fold-out sofa, but Harry is not sure this arrangement is proper this year. The little ones have grown. Roy perhaps is too big and observant to share a bedroom with his parents, and the girl is getting to be enough of a lady to deserve a little privacy. He explains his plan. This year I thought we might put the cot in the storage room for Judy. She can use our bathroom and then shut the door, and give Roy the living room sofa. The small boy gazes upward at his grandfather, while his thumb sneaks toward his mouth. The kid takes in everything and says nothing. Harry speaks down to him roughly. What's the matter with that? The thumb roots in deeper, and the child's eyes, darker even than Nelson's and Janice's, shine with distrust. Judy offers to explain. He's scared to be alone in his room all by himself, the baby. Prue tries to help. Sweetie, Mommy and Daddy would be right in that other room, where you used to sleep before you became so grown up. Nelson says, "You might have discussed it first with us, Dad, before you switched everything around." "Discuss it? When is there a chance to discuss anything with you? Every time I call the lot, you're not there, or the line is busy. I used to get Jake or Rudy at least. Now all I get is some fruity-voiced pal of yours you've hired." "Yeah, Lyle tells me how you grill him about everything." "I don't grill him. I'm just trying to act interested. I still have an interest up there, even if you do think you're running it half the year." "Half the year? All the year, from what Mom says." Janice intervenes. "What Mom says is her legs hurt after all that sitting in the car, and she's thinking of moving the cocktail hour ahead, if this is how you're all going to talk for 5 days. Nelson, your father was trying to be considerate about the sleeping arrangements. He and I discussed it. Judy, which would you rather, the sofa or the ironing room?" "I didn't mind the old way," she says. "Fine, fine," Harry says. "I don't give a fuck where anybody sleeps." And in demonstration of his indifference, strides into his own bedroom, past the king-size bed they bought down here, into the little windowless room, and picks up the folding cot and lugs it through the doorways into the guest bedroom. He is embarrassed. He overestimated how fast Judy was growing. He had wanted to embower her as his princess. He doesn't know little girls. Janice says, "Harry, you mustn't overexert yourself," the doctor said. "The doctor said," he mocks. "All he ever sees is people over 75, and he says to me just what he says to them." But he is breathing hard, and Prue hastens after him to spare him the effort of straightening the folding leg. Back in the living room, Harry says to Nelson, who's holding little Roy in his arms again, "Now are you and the brat happy?" For answer, Nelson turns to Janice and says, "Jesus, Mom, I don't know as I can stand 5 days of this." But then, when they all get settled, the suitcases unpacked into bureaus, Judy and Roy fed milk and cookies and changed into bathing suits and taken to the heated Valhalla Village pool by their mother and Janice, who has to sign them in, Harry and Nelson sit each with a beer at the round glass table and try to be friends. "So," Harry says, "how's the car business?" "You know as well as I do," Nelson says. "You see the stat sheets every month." He smokes a cigarette as if he's feeding himself something through a tube, constantly fiddling with the shape of the ash on the edge of a white clamshell. His hands shake more than a young man's should. "How do you like the 89s?" Harry asks, determined not to be put off now that he and the boy are alone. "Dull, Dad. Boxy. They're still giving us cars that look like gas misers when there's been a gas glut for 10 years. Americans want to go back to fins and convertibles and the limo look, and these Japs are still trying to sell these tidy little boxes. And they treat us like dirt. They see us as soft. 10 more years, they'll have bought the whole country." "Don't get down on the Japanese like that, Nelson. We've done fine riding along with the Japanese." "Riding along, you said it. You always talk of them with such awe, like they're supermen. They're not." The kid keeps sniffing and lights another cigarette, after not enjoying the one he just snuffed out. "And they're so damn dictatorial," he says. "They tell you exactly what to charge, what to put in the windows, what your salespeople should wear. They expect you to be their robot." Now Rabbit is fully offended. "Welcome to the real world, kid. You're going to be part of some organization or other in this life. Toyota's been good to us and good to your grandfather, and don't you forget it." But Nelson goes on, "Grandpa was a dealer, Dad. He loved to make deals. There was some play in the situation, some space for creativity. Unloading the trade-ins is about the only spontaneous creative thing left in the business now. At least you can cut an extra $1,000 or so if you get a dummy. Selling new is just running the cash register. I don't call that selling, just standing at the checkout counter. Not bad for 45 thou plus benefits. When I was 32, he tells the boy, perhaps not for the first time, I was pulling down $13,500 a year as a linotyper and came home dirty every night." "That was then, Dad. This is now. You were still in the industrial era. I hate to break the news to you, but 40,000 just isn't a fuck of a lot if you want to live with any style." "Jesus, how much style do you and Prue need? Your house is free. All you do is cover heat and taxes." "The taxes on that barn have crept up to over $4,000, Nelson says. Also, the federal tax reform didn't do a thing for my bracket. You got to be rich to get the benefits. Lyle was showing me on a spreadsheet. That's something else I wanted to ask you about, Harry interrupts. Whose idea was it to replace Mildred Croust with this guy? Dad, she'd been with Springer Motors forever. The apartment door furtively clicks open. Just me, Janice's voice calls. Prue and the babies want to stay at the pool a little longer, and I thought I'd come back and start dinner. Keep talking, boys. She must imagine they are having a healing talk, father to son. In fact, Harry is looking at Nelson as if the boy is a computer. There is a glitch, a secret. He talks too much, too rapidly. Something is revving him up, something wrong. Harry says of Mildred Croust, she wasn't that old, actually, was she? 68? 69? Dad, she was in her 70s and counting. Lyle does all she ever used to do and comes in only 2 or 3 days a week. He's doing something different. I can see that on the stat sheets, Harry says. That was the thing I wanted to ask you about. The figures on the used in the November set. There is a look Nelson gets when he's angry or frightened that Harry has always thought of as white around the gills. A tension-draining color from the child's face and pulling his eyes back into his head. For some reason, the kid has it now. He rises from his chair and seems to be heading toward his mother, who has been knocking things around in the kitchen. "Janice!" Harry shouts, turning his head with difficulty, his neck stiff with fat. She stands in the kitchen entryway in a wet black bathing suit and a purple wraparound skirt. "What?" she says, responding guiltily to the urgent sound of Harry's voice. "Where did that latest batch of sheets from the lot go? Weren't they sitting over on the desk?" "Were they?" she asks. "Maybe I threw them out. Your idea, Harry, is just pile everything on it, and it'll still be there next year when you want it. These just came in last week. They were November's financial summaries." Her mouth pinches in and her face seems to click shut on the decision she will stick to blindly no matter what happens, the way women do. "I don't know where they went to," she says. Nelson stands beside his mother at the mouth of the kitchen. "No big deal, Dad," he says in a dry-mouthed voice. "You'll be getting the December summaries in a couple of weeks." When he turns toward the refrigerator to get himself another beer, he gives Rabbit a heartbreaking view of the back of his head, the careful rat's tail, the curved sliver of earring, the growing bald spot. Their 5th winter down here, this is, and Harry still wakes amazed to find himself actually in Florida, beside the Gulf of Mexico. If not exactly beside it, within sight of it. At least he was until that new row of 6-story condos with ornamental turrets and Spanish tile roofs shut out the last distant wink of watery horizon. The sound that breaks into his dreams and dispels them is the rasp of golf greens being mowed, and then the scarcely less mechanical weeping noise of the seagulls gathering on the freshly watered fairways, where the earthworms are surfacing to drink. Today is Wednesday. He has a golf date, his usual foursome, tee-off time at 9:40. The thought gives him a reason to get out of bed and not just lie there forever. He hears Janice in the kitchen, talking in an unreal high, needling sort of voice, the way we talk to children. By the time Rabbit opens the door, the first fight of the day has begun in the kitchen. Precious little Judy is unhappy. Salt tears redden the rims of her lids. "But half the kids in my school have been to Disney World. Some of them have even been twice, and they don't even have grandparents living in Florida," she says. Janice is explaining, "It's really a whole separate trip, sweetheart. You should fly to Orlando if you want to go. To go from here, it'd be like driving to Pittsburgh," Harry finishes for her. "Daddy promised," the child protests, with such passion that her 4-year-old brother, holding a spoon suspended in his fist above a bowl of total he is mushing without eating, sobs in sympathy. Prue says, "Daddy didn't mean this time. He meant some other time when we have more days." "He said this time," the child insists. "He's always breaking promises." Daddy's very busy earning money so you can have all the things you want, Prue tells her, taking the prim tone of one woman losing patience with another. Oh, yeah, the child replies, with a furious, sarcastic emphasis Harry doesn't understand. Family life, life with children, is something out of his past that he has not been sorry to leave behind. Now Nelson is stirred up and sucked into the kitchen by the fuss. He must have heard himself being talked about and comes in from the guest bedroom, bare-chested and unshaven in rumpled smoky blue pajama bottoms that look expensive. Unease infiltrates Harry's abdomen with this observation of Nelson's expensive taste, something he is trying to remember about numbers, something he can't reach. Janice said the boy looked exhausted, and he does look thin, with faint shadows flickering between his ribs. "What's this about promises?" he asks angrily. "I never promised to go up to Orlando this trip." "Daddy, there's nothing to do in this dumb part of Florida," Judy says. "There's tons to do," Nelson says. "Go swim in the pool. Go play shuffleboard." He runs dry almost immediately and looks in panic at his mother. "And there's the beach," Janice goes on. Judy replies, just making objections now. "Our teacher says the sun gives you skin damage, and the earlier you get it, the more cancer you'll get later on." "Don't be such a fucking smartass," Nelson says to her. "Your grandmother's trying to be nice." His remark makes the child's tears spill. "I wasn't being," she tries to get out. At her age, this girl should be happier than she is, Harry thinks. "Sure you were," he tells her. "And why not? It's boring going somewhere with family, away from your friends. Anybody want to hear my plan?" The little girl nods. "Today, I got to play golf, but tonight there's bingo in the dining hall, and I thought the kids, or at least Judy, would enjoy that, and we could all use a real meal for a change. Tomorrow, we could either go to this Lionel Train and Seashell Museum, or in the other direction south there's the Edison House. I've always been kind of curious about it, but it may be a little advanced for kids. I don't know." "Dad," Nelson says in his pained voice, sniffing, "I thought we came down here to relax, and you're making some kind of educational ordeal of it. Come on, lay off." Rabbit is hurt. "Lay off? I was just trying to create a little structure," he says. Prue intervenes in his defense. "Nelson, the children can't spend all day in the pool. They'll get too much ultraviolet." Janice says, "This hot weather is bound to turn cool this time of year. It's fluky." "It's the greenhouse effect," Nelson says, turning to go to the bathroom, showing that disgusting rat's tail at the back of his head, the glint of earring. How queer is the kid? Prue takes away Roy's dreadful little bowl of total mush, congealed like dog food left out overnight. "Want a nana?" she asks in a cooing, coaxing, sexy voice. Janice confesses, "Teresa, I'm not sure we have any bananas. In fact, I know we don't." She brightens. Her voice goes up in volume. "That's what we can do this morning while Grandpa plays his golf. We can all go to Winn-Dixie and do an enormous shopping." "Count me out," Nelson yells from the bathroom. "I'd like to borrow the car sometime, though." Judy's tears have dried, and she has snuck into the living room, where the Today Show is doing its last recap of the news and weather. The sound of the shower running leaks into the kitchen. "Why the hell's Nelson so jittery?" Harry asks the women aloud. Prue, who must know the answer, doesn't give it, and Janice says he's under stress. It's a much more competitive car world than it was 10 years ago, and Nelson's doing it all himself. He doesn't have Charlie to hide behind like you did. He could have kept Charlie on, but he didn't want to. Charlie was willing to stay part-time, he says, but nobody answers him. He takes his mug into the living room and settles on the sofa side of the round glass table, since Judy occupies the wicker armchair that faces the television set. "How would you like to go sun-fishing sometime?" he asks her. "What's sun-fishing?" "It's sailing in a little boat. We'd go off one of the hotel beaches in Deleon. They're supposed to be just for the guests, but I know the guy who runs the concession. I play golf with his father. Her eyes don't leave his face. Have you ever done it, Grandpa? Sun fishing? Sure, a couple of times. Sounds neat, Judy ventures, adding, I got a prize in my camp swimming class for staying underwater the longest. She returns her gaze to the television, rapidly flicking through the channels with the hand control. Channel surfing, kids call it. Harry tries to imagine the world seen through her clear green eyes. Every little thing vivid and sharp and new, packed full of itself like a satin valentine. His own vision feels fogged, no matter which glasses he puts on, for reading or far vision. He wears the latter only for movies and night driving, and refuses to get bifocals. Glasses worn for more than an hour at a time hurt his ears. And the lenses are always dusty, and the things he looks at all seem tired. He's seen them too many times before. A kind of drought has settled over the world, a bleaching such as overtakes old color prints, even the ones kept in a drawer. When he returns from playing golf that afternoon, Janice and Prue and the kids are playing hearts. That is, 3 of them are, and little Roy is holding a fistful of cards while his mother tells him what to do and which to discard. They all greet Harry, as though he's going to rescue them from boredom, but he feels so beat, all he wants to do is lie down and let his body soak in nothingness. He asks, "Where's Nelson?" It's not the right question, at least in front of the kids. Janice and Prue glance toward one another, and then Prue volunteers, "He's out doing a few errands in the car." "What kind of errands does he have to do?" "Oh, Harry," Janice says, "people need things. And he likes to drive around. He gets claustrophobic." "We all get claustrophobic," he tells her. "Most of us don't go stealing cars about it." "You look exhausted. Did you lose?" "How'd you guess?" he asks. "You always lose. He plays with these 3 Jewish men," she explains to her daughter-in-law, "and they always take $20 off of him." "Don't be so prejudiced. You sound like your mother," he says. "And for your information, I win as often as not." "I never hear about it when you do. They keep telling you how good you are and then take your money." It occurs to him that she is saying these disagreeable and absurd things as a distraction from Nelson's rude and mysterious absence. Judy says, "Grandpa, come take Roy's hand and play. He doesn't know how to even hold the cards, and he's being fussy." Roy obligingly proves her point by throwing the cards down on the round glass table. Judy swiftly whomps him with the hand not holding her cards. "You messed up the trick so nobody can play," she says to him, "and I was going to shoot the moon." Prue neatly fans her hand face down on the table, and with the other arm pulls the wailing little boy against her chest. Seeing this, Judy flares into jealousy and races off toward Harry and Janice's bedroom. Prue smiles wanly, looking exhausted herself. "Everybody's tired and cranky," she sort of sings. Janice stands, a bit wobbly for a second. "Maybe we made them do too much," she says. Rabbit goes into his bedroom. If nobody but Janice were here, he would lie on this bed, push his eyes through a few pages of the history book she gave him for Christmas, close his eyes on the sound of the bird dryly chirping in the Norfolk pine, and succumb to the great heaviness of being. But Judy has beat him to his own king-size bed with its jade-green fitted coverlet. She is curled up and hiding her face. He lies down close to the edge and lets her press her knees against his presence. "Better rest up for bingo tonight," he says. "If Roy goes, I'm not going," she says. "Don't be down on Roy," he tells her. "He's a good scout." "He's not. He gets all the attention and everything ever since he was born, just because he's a boy." He says, "It's tough. I was in your shoes, except it was reversed. I had a sister instead of a brother. Didn't you hate her?" He answers, "No, I guess to be honest, I loved her. I loved Mim." The truth of this shocks him. He realizes how few others in his life he has loved so bluntly, without something of scorn, as his little wiry Mim. Was she younger than you or older? Younger. Younger even than me, than Roy is than you. Formulating even this much thickens his tongue and blurs his mind. Judy, let's have a contest. You lie over there, and I'll lie here, and we'll see who can fall asleep soonest. Who'll be the judge? She asks. Your mother, he says, letting his moccasins fall from his feet onto the floor over the edge of the bed. He closes his eyes on the poster-like Florida sunshine. He wakes frightened, with dribble down from one corner of his mouth. He feels like a drum that has just been struck. At some point in his sleep, his chest began to ache, a stale, sorrowful ache he associates with the pathetically bad way he played golf this afternoon, unable to concentrate, unable to loosen up. Only Judy is in the living room. She is flicking silently back and forth between channels. Where is everybody? He asks. Grandma went to her women's group. Mom put Roy down for his nap. Your daddy? He thinks midway he shouldn't bring it up, but the words are out. Judy shrugs and finishes the sentence. Hasn't checked in yet. Their voices bring Prue out of her bedroom in little white shorts. Her face has taken wrinkles from the pillow and seems a bit blurred and bloated by sleep or a spell of crying. He asks his daughter-in-law, What's up? She, too, shrugs. I guess we'll go to dinner when Janice comes back. I'll feed Roy some applesauce to hold him. He and Judy play a hand of rummy, while Prue gently clatters in the kitchen and then coos to Roy. Harry resents it when Janice comes back, with that aggressive glow her women's group gives her. Oh, Harry, you men have been so naughty. Not only were we considered chattel, but all those patriarchal religions tried to make us feel all guilty about menstruating. They said we were unclean. Sorry, he says. That was a crummy thing to do. That was Eve's basic sin, the lady professor told us, Janice goes on, half to Prue. Something about apples being the color of blood. I couldn't quite follow it. Harry interrupts. By any chance, are either of you two Eves like me, sort of starving? Yes, Janice decides. Let's just go to dinner. We'll leave a note for Nelson. The dining hall, on the floor of Building B above Club 19, is a combination restaurant and function room. On the one hand, there are menus with choices and prices, and waitresses in brief gold outfits echoing Valhalla's ring-gold theme that figures here and there in the decor when the interior decorator remembered it. On the other hand, all the time you're eating, on Wednesday and Saturday nights, bingo goes on the other side of the room, run from a stage and microphone somewhat out of sight behind an enormous flanged pillar that holds up the room's starry-curved ceiling. 71, a lugubrious male voice hidden behind the pillar intones. It repeats, 7, 1. It is hard to carry on a conversation with the numbers blaring from the loudspeakers. Prue mothers Roy and coaxes a little baked potato and a single stir-fried shrimp into him. Janice talks Judy into ordering a lobster, and then has to show her how to crack it, how to push out the big curved piece of white meat with a finger up through the poor boiled creature's ass. Rabbit, who has ordered eye of round steak, can hardly bear to watch. Judy's perfect little hands are shiny with lobster. She whispers something to her mother. Prue explained she's worried about Daddy not getting anything to eat, and makes her wry, one-sided mouth. Is this grimace a communication to him, a little lament, inviting him to conspire with her against Nelson? Judy's shiny green eyes turn up toward her grandfather, as if she expects him to make an unsympathetic response. Instead, he tells her, Don't you worry, Judy. People can get served here until 9, and then at Club 19 downstairs they have sandwiches until midnight. The girl's lower lip trembles, and she gets out. He might not have any money. Why wouldn't he have any money? The girl explains. A lot of times he doesn't have any money. Bills come, and even men keep coming to the house, and Mommy can't pay them. Her eyes shift over to her mother's face, and she realizes she has said too much. Prue looks away, wiping a crumb of potato from the corner of Roy's mouth. Things have been a bit tight, she admits almost inaudibly. Harry wants to pursue it. Really? Nelson's making 50 grand a year with the benefits and bonuses. My father used to support us all on less than 2,200. Harry, Janice breaks in a voice that sounds like her mother's. People now need more things than your father did. That was a simpler world. They are hiding something from him, Harry sees. Well, I don't know what the hell's going on, he says. No one contradicts him. Nelson's absence grows bigger as their meal wears on. Janice and Prue have decaf coffee and, preoccupied, dying to talk to each other, watch Harry finish Judy's dessert. The waitress finally comes with the check, and as he signs it with their condo number, he feels like a god casually dispatching thunderbolts. The sum will appear on his monthly statement next year when the world has moved greatly on. How full he feels, stepping into the night air, a float of a man in a parade of dependents. Harry carries Roy, who fell asleep during dessert. Janice and Prue hold Judy, one by each hand, and because she has been good during their boring and long meal, allow her to swing herself between them, giggling as they grunt with the strain. The entrance to Building B looms alluringly with its cabined yellow glow. The 5 angstroms each cope in their way with the sore place inside them, Nelson's gnawing absence. They fumble through the protected entrances, the elevator, the peach and silver hallway, avoiding each other's eyes in smiling embarrassment. In the condo, Janice tells Harry, "You go to bed, hun. You look beat. I'm too jazzed up to sleep. Prue and I will sit in the kitchen." "Don't sit up too late." On an impulse he adds to reassure her, "The kid's all right. He's just having some kind of a toot." Prue glances at him in surprise, as if he's said more than he knows. He feels goaded to elaborate. "Both me and Toyota give him a royal pain in the ass for some reason." Again he is not contradicted. He reads a little in bed and turns out the light. He hears Janice and Prue murmuring, a clink of glass, a footstep, and then a buzzer rasping and hasty footsteps, a woman's voice in the nervous pitch you use for talking over a loudspeaker, not trusting it, and then, in a later fold of his restless, distended consciousness, the door opening. Nelson's voice, deep among the women's, and most dreamlike of all, laughter, all of them laughing. A gnashing sound. The greens being mowed by kids on those big ugly reel mowers. Excited seagulls weeping. Amazing. He is still in Florida, still alive. Morning chilly sea air wafts from the Gulf through the 2-inch crack. The sliding door was left open. Janice is asleep in bed beside him. He nudges her shoulder. "Janice?" he whispers. Her voice comes muffled. "What? Leave me alone." "What time do you come to bed?" "I didn't dare look. 1, she says. "Where had Nelson been?" She rolls over, giving up. "He didn't know exactly, just driving around. He said he needed to get out. Florida is so claustrophobic." "I can't believe it," Harry says. "Without so much as a fucking word to anybody, he disappears for what, 8 hours? He is really becoming crazy." Janice says, "He was perfectly sober when he came back, and brought a bunch of those little tiny stuffed alligators they make for souvenirs. Prue and I had to laugh." "What do you and Prue talk about all the time?" he asks. She answers thin-lipped, "Oh, women things." She's worried about Nelson. "Who wouldn't be?" Rabbit says curtly.